2017. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, will you take roll call, please?
Mayor Kaiser noted absent. Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Here.
Trustee Bornstein?
Here.
Trustee Koopman?
Here.
Trustee Elliott?
Here.
Trustee Medlicott?
Here.
Trustee Murphy?
Here. We have before us a consent agenda. Are there any modifications, questions?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Medlicott?
Yes.
Trustee Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes. First item on the agenda is a recognition. Chief.
Thank you. This is an opportunity we don't get very often on the police department, so it's actually a very big deal when we have this opportunity to promote one of our own to the next level. I'd like Joseph Lundy to step forward. He's been with us now for a number of years, and I remember hiring him as a brand new officer for the town of Monument. And I saw something in him at that time where I said, you know what, he seems to have the courage, the fortitude, the professionalism, and the desire to be a great officer for us. And I saw that in him at that time about 8 years ago. And over those 8 years, I've come to really appreciate the wisdom, the knowledge, the professionalism, and the insight that at that time, Officer and then Detective Lundy provided to the Monument Police Department. We were able to, with our town manager's support, and because of the growth we're experiencing, and because of actually the town manager's belief that we need to be mentoring our own to take our positions when we retire, we were able to get a third sergeant. And I put on the test, and Joe Lundy came out #1 on that test, and it's through his hard work and dedication to the Monument Police Department that I'm proud at this time to offer him the position and have his sweetheart, Emily, if you would come up, to actually pin the badge on his shirt as he takes over the role of a sergeant. You are hereby promoted to the rank of sergeant with the Monument Police Department with all the commensurate duties, responsibilities as assigned. Joe, thank you so much. And Emily, if you'll do the honors. They're stabbing. I can hear it back there. You know what, as she's doing that, when he was a detective and first started dating Emily, I said, is she going to accept your position in all the work that you have to do as a police officer? And I know for a fact there were a number of times when he was called out as a detective and ended up leaving Emily at the restaurant.
On my birthday.
I did throw a credit card down on the table. Just for the record.
Dang it.
I hope you found out what it is.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations, Sergeant Lundeen. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation from Terry Hayes.
It's a hard act to follow.
Didn't make part of your
Oh, we've got this new thing here.
packet. No, but it's not. It wasn't in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't catch it? Wasn't in there?
Now we get these screens that have.
No, but your presentation is in front of us.
Oh, I know, but I want you to take something home. Just in case. Oh yeah, you. Okay. I am Terry Hayes, President of the Tri Lakes Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Corporation, and Visitor Center. And This will be brief, because I know you guys have been brief before, but I just think it's a good thing that we do on an annual basis, just kind of update who we are, what we're doing, and then some new things that we're planning for 2017. We do wear 3 hats. As I talked about, we are a chamber, a visitor center, and an economic development corporation. For the chamber, the Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce provides leadership to support, improve, and promote existing and new business. We do this by providing services, information, and programs that enable our member businesses to be successful. We achieve this through shared resources such as networking, communication, small business development, demographic information, providing seminars, and training. Productive, profitable businesses are, of course, important to the town. Our visitor center, we are actually more of an information center because, as we know, Monument really isn't a tourist destination as someone who might come here for a week to spend, but we're a wonderful place to live and work. So we have a lot of people that come to us that are passing through, so we do operate as a visitor center. Sometimes if they leave DIA, they actually think that we're Colorado Springs already, which is to our benefit. We get an opportunity to get them to stop into Monument and say, well, you're not quite Colorado Springs yet, but here, why don't you check us out for a while and then head down to Colorado Springs. We give out a lot of maps, and we have the 2 biggest groups that we help though are people that are brand new to the area. They've moved in. You can tell they're frazzled. They're like, I'm surrounded by boxes. However, I need this, or I need this, or can you recommend this? And then the 3rd group that we help are the people that are looking to move to either our area, or sometimes it's just up and down the Front Range. They're not sure. They're visiting all different kinds of areas. So then, of course, we'll talk about our school district. We'll talk about our small town feel, but we have all the amenities that you need real nearby. So it gives us an opportunity to sell our community to those that are looking to come to our area. Economic Development Corporation. In the last half of 2017, we have been much more involved as a local economic development corporation. We are letting our local primary businesses know that we are here for them. If you recall, a primary business is a business that has more than 50% of their income coming from outside of the area. These businesses are always very, very important to us because they are what helps support our secondary businesses. We need that new money coming into the area. And our secondary businesses are businesses like our retail and our restaurants that we love. Goals for 2018. The Chamber of Commerce, we are continuing to be a community hub. Budget allowing, our rehab of our old building, which is off of Highway 105, we're going to create that as a second community hub. It is a building that we own, but we are sitting on CDOT land, so we are somewhat limited of what we can do with it. However, we figured the best opportunity, since we are frequently full and we're actually having to turn people away from using our community room because someone else has already booked it, we're looking to turn that into another community room. It just involves paint, some carpet, and the little deck thing that moves, goes up to the front door is actually rotten, so we have to replace that. So it's not huge things that need to be done, and I would really like to get that up and running as a second community source for the summer of 2018. A lot of groups that we are having to turn away are potentially our weekly groups because that's tying up our room too much, but that will allow some of the weekly groups to go ahead and meet. In an effort to maintain the quality of life in the Tri-Lakes area, the Tri-Lakes Chamber is involved with and plans events within the community that celebrate the character of the Tri-Lakes area and enhance the quality of life for its residents. We work closely with Madeline in support of the events that she puts on, in addition to those that we also host, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We strive to represent the members of the Chamber and the Tri-Lakes community regarding local affairs, government, and education interests by being a point of contact for each of these areas in which communication regarding issues, discussions, and representation can occur. As a lot of you know, I'm on numerous committees for the school district, the county, the coalition of 925, the other chambers in the area. You pretty much name it. If there's a large group here, I attend. But I feel that that's very important for us to do. I feel that my attendance in those meetings helps me to keep a pulse on the community and also be able to jump in at any time that anybody needs help, they need an introduction, they need a resource, whatever it is, we're just here to support the whole community. Visitor Center. All of our brochures and business card holders are actually full, which is a wonderful thing. So 2018, we're looking at getting some more of those done. Those are very expensive because they're wood, and it takes a custom woodworker to do them, but we have outgrown and we need to get some more. I've been trying for a while to open a half day on Saturdays. Every time I am actually in the office on a Saturday, someone's always coming knocking several times, and especially during our busiest times from June to September. So my goal is to find a volunteer that can just put in 4 hours, like a 9 to 1, because usually it tends to be in the morning that people come, just so that we are a resource additionally for people coming into our area. They want to have a recommendation of where to shop, where to eat, where to do things. We also want to expand our exposure. I'm not completely exactly sure what that looks like yet, but we are beyond continually reaching out to our local population to remind them of all the great businesses and restaurants that we have in our town. It could be social media campaigns, ads in magazines, etc. We're going to be discussing that actually this January, our board, at our strategic planning meeting. Third area, EDC. So we talked about primary businesses on the last slide. I feel one of the most important roles in 2018 will be about education. And I've spoken to several trustees about that. We've had an opportunity to recently have a one-on-one. I am working on a series of articles / white papers explaining how planning, zoning, comprehensive plans, both yours and the counties, because we do represent the Tri-Lakes area, and other topics on how development actually works. I think our planning department, planning commission, and board of trustees would appreciate us addressing questions and concerns like the perception that the town owns all the vacant land in the area, which we know is not true, but our residents don't. It's something, and I myself, before I took this position, did not know how any of this worked. So we want to try and educate them. Or educating on how businesses come to town and they actually have not gone out to solicit every single type of car business that there is available out there to come to our town. That was not us. So we just want to clarify. And also, of course, address the legality of being able to always just handpick whoever comes here and who cannot come here. And I am working very closely with Jennifer in the planning department with that also. We also want to educate our businesses and accountants on the enterprise zone, because that's a very important tax benefit to a lot of our businesses. And the businesses themselves, we don't expect them to automatically know about it, but I do expect the accountants to know about it, and a lot of them don't. So we're reaching out to all of our commercial accountants in the area to let them know this is a benefit for their businesses. And then we also want to engage the public more and find out what they would like here. See what is feasible. We will not, for instance, have our #1 asked for business, Chick-fil-A, here in the near future, because frankly, we do not meet their demographic needs. But when someone says, why can't we get one here? I think just the fact that it doesn't happen is not enough. We need to give them a reason and understand that all of these particular larger companies and larger organizations have reasons and have their own lists of why they come to a community and why they don't. So it will help explain how those decisions are made. And then also, rather than having residents wonder why, we'll be able to tell them why, and why we probably are not going to be getting a Costco or a Target anytime soon, which seem to be the two latest rumors. Every time anybody breaks ground somewhere, they think it's a Costco or a Target. So, and again, not their fault. It's just something that happens and people in the neighborhoods. And so I figure the more we can put out publicly, the more educated they'll be. And then my goal is for them to put their energies into things that we can change and that we can influence. Let's see. Next one, facility use. As I just mentioned earlier, we do let our facility out for different groups. These are actually the events, just two of the events of many, many, many that we do, that we use our facility. We let our members and our nonprofits and non-member nonprofits, so all nonprofits, use our community room at no charge. Our breakfast networking is actually at capacity right now, and that is just for our members, that is doing really, really well. So twice a month, we have a bunch of people from all over our community coming in to town for our breakfasts. And hopefully we end at 9 o'clock, and then they'll go out and go shopping or running errands in our communities. We also have, our monthly education series is open to anyone, so that is not member driven. That is, our members are invited also and they do attend, but we do open them up for everybody. We have decided when we first started to do an education series that we did not want to limit them to members only. And they are business oriented and they're very educational. And then actually just today, we set an additional one for January, and we figured with everything that's going on in our world, which is unfortunately not always positive, Chief is going to do a second active shooter class for us. He did one 2 years ago, and we were at capacity in that room, and it's mainly geared towards what do our businesses do if someone walks into their business. And so that's what he is going to address and help educate our businesses. This is, I'm not going to read through all these, but this is just a small, just through October, and not everybody who uses our facility. So right now we're at over 2,200 people that have come through October that uses it, and they are all gamuts. And these are not our events, these are other people's events. So the great thing about this is these are not chamber people, these are community people. So these are people that sometimes may not have been downtown. So we hear from our downtown businesses that they really hate someone to say, I never knew you were here, and they've been here for 15 years. Well, this helps bring people from other parts of the community that may not live downtown to realize there is a whole bunch of other stuff here to do, other than some of the other parts that they may be very familiar with. So it's just a way that people get introduced into downtown. And then we have 3 different events that we do that are community oriented. I'm not going to cover our chamber events because those are pretty much member oriented. But of course we do the 4th of July street fair. It's a very long day, starting at about 5:30 in the morning and ending at 9 o'clock at night. But it's a very much beloved day for our community. Several nonprofits come together to make it successful. Our portion of it is the street fair and the beer garden. We had 93 individual vendors that actually took up over 120 vendor spaces, because some are bigger than a 10 by 10 space, and which was a record attendance, and we also had record attendance of our beer garden this year. And we are guessing, with 4th of July being in the middle of the week next year, either people take the entire week off, or if they're not willing to do that, they stay here. So we typically are busier on weekdays when 4th of July falls on weekdays. When it falls on weekends, they tend to go out somewhere. So I anticipate Wednesday is going to be, next year is going to be very, very busy, which we're looking forward to. Concerts in the park. We schedule 8 free concerts. We agreed to take over concerts in the park when Historic Monument Merchants Association was unable to continue managing. That was 3 years ago. And we have been very happy to organize this event. And it's free and it's very entertaining. There were 6 concerts when we took it over. We increased it to 8. Because we always lose 1 or 2 due to rain. So we would like to be able to at least net 6 a year. But when we did 6 and we still lost 1 or 2 to rain, that meant there's only about 4. So that's why we increased it. It costs us on average $12,000 for this series to provide professional quality musicians, sound, and lighting. And we receive approximately $3,200 in Pass the Hat donations for the year. But then we do raise the rest through sponsorships. All of them are our members that are sponsors for this particular event. And it's an absolute fun one. This is the one event that we do that we don't make money on. This is our gift to the community, and it's something that we've been very, very happy to do. The last community-oriented event is Vines and Brews, and we just held our 3rd year. And attendance has grown every single year. Those that have attended have had a wonderful time, and it is an event that we plan on continuing in the future. I know Robert attended. Did you have fun?
The part that I remember, yes.
So we try to keep that event small on purpose. We don't really want to top more than 500-600 people total. It has a different feel. It is not Manitou's massive beer fest with 1,000 people running around. It is a nice, small, quaint one. It is ones where they can actually talk to the brewers, especially people that are interested in brewing their beer. And the brewers love the idea that they're not looking at a line of 50 people just pouring, that they can actually take the time to talk to people. So it's good for them too. And we have a jazz band there. We give out free water and sodas everywhere, because if you're drinking alcohol, I want you to have as unlimited non-alcoholic beverages, some food vendors, and it's just a fun event. This last year we had wonderful weather up until the last hour, and then it poured. But luckily we have lots of tents that everybody was able to get under. And that is basically it. We actually do a lot of other events, but they are chamber specific, and so I thought for the purposes here tonight I would just cover what we did on a community basis, and wanted to find out if you guys have any questions on what we do.
Questions from the board?
Just a comment, Jerry. I think your organization does an A+ job, and the concerts, I mean, they get better every year. A question for you: has the chamber ever entertained maybe having one concert over on the east side, utilizing the clock tower and maybe doing something over there? I'm just throwing this out.
Sure. No, we have not, but that is absolutely something we can look into. I think what I don't know is, the electricity power over there. I do know they have the movies over there, so I would imagine they could handle a professional speaker system.
And I don't know,
Yeah.
that's something that you all know, but I'm just asking. But again, thank you for everything that you do.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Thank you.
very much.
Next on the agenda, we have an update on our code enforcement. Ms. Ellis?
Hello. Well, mine's not quite as exciting and opportunistic as that, but I'll give you some numbers at least. This report is through today, actually, so I don't have a formal report for you because it included today's inspections and follow-ups and all that kind of stuff. And I want to give you those numbers as well. So, as of today, we've got about 101 cases, almost 300 inspections from those cases, about 90 notices, courtesy notices, handful of second notices that have had to go out. Quite a few people who call in with concerns. I don't like to call them complaints because, they're just concerns. Almost 50 that I've received, which is quite a big number for a small town. A lot of times, I'm doing 99% of the observations and people just don't call in, but it's actually a good thing. And some people may not think that it is, but it's really just, watching out for the community, making sure things are cleaned up. I talked to a guy today who's trying to sell his house, and the house across the street is kind of preventing that or prohibiting that. So, looked into some issues for him and things like that. So, it's good that people are involved, and it engages me with them so that I can, get to know people in the community, not only through leaving notices, but also through people who, need to call in and have some things taken care of. So that's great. I've gotten to know quite a few people. I can break down the types of violations if you'd like. You want to know
Yes,
what's
please.
out there? Okay. Weeds, about 39. Vehicles, 14. Trash, 6. Signs, 10. Other, which I'll tell you what those are in a minute, 12. RVs and trailers, 7. Lawns, 2. And then junk and debris, outside storage, that type of stuff, 11. And once we get more numbers, I will have a bigger range of types of violations for you, but when there's just like one of each thing for other, I just throw them in the other category. But things like lighting, signs, animals, dead animals, street lights out, train horns, parking over the sidewalks, home occupations, living in campers, working on vehicles, those types of things are kind of in the other category. And as there's more and more of those, I'll break those out for you. Instead of having a big long report that has one, it just looks better with others. So, for this season, with kind of the weeds and trees and people being out so much, now we're kind of getting into the season where I'll be focusing more on vehicles, parking, trying to get things cleared out for plowing and snow shoveling and stuff like that. In the last, I'd say 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so, quite a few of the calls I've received have been about parking, vehicles that are parked too many over the sidewalk, haven't moved for a while, things like that. So I'm going to focus on those, kind of get things cleared up. Also focus a little more on downtown. I've had numerous requests to focus on downtown as well. And I had spoken with quite a few people down there, and I said, let me get through the busy season with weeds and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll start to focus on the downtown area. Meet up with them again and find out, what their big concerns are. I have an idea because I have met with them, but we'll go over it again and see what we can do. So I have ventured into the common interest communities or the HOAs, only if they need my help. Otherwise, you know, they kind of are supposed to police themselves with their covenant enforcement and that type of thing. So, but there are times when it really does fall on us to take care of, and I've got, you know, several that are in those kind of communities as well. I also want to work on getting some additional information on the website. So just kind of updating that, and the calls that I receive and hear, you know, the common questions and things like that, and, you know, just get that information out there so people have, you know, a good resource to go to. So, any questions?
I just had one, based on the amount of complaints that you dealt into, as far as solution, resolution, put to rest, what percentage is that?
Oh, well, actually, I have that number. So in 101 cases, 68 of them are closed, 33 are open, but 25 were new as of today. So 8 are still open because we're just still working on them for one reason or another.
So are you finding that the residents or the parties are team players and they're going, oops, and we'll fix this? That's great.
Yeah, I do. And you know, for instance, I talked to a gentleman today working on vehicles, said, since when can I not do that? It's my property. You know, I can't tell you what to do, all that kind of stuff. We talked for a good 15 minutes, got him to the point where I understood what, you know, the code says, and he agreed that he wouldn't bring these vehicles home anymore. He kind of flips them, if you call it that. And he brings them home, works on them, and, you know, neighbors were complaining about all the vehicles coming and going, and, you know, got him to realize that you just can't do that in, you know, this happened to be downtown. And you just can't do that in a residential neighborhood, and why. Came up with some solutions, you know, keep everything in the garage, told him what he could or couldn't do. And, you know, he at first was very defensive about it, but after I talked to him for a little bit, he calmed down and understood. It's really just about informing people and educating them. And I know Laura did a fantastic job of that. I've talked to a few people that they've, you know, who've talked to Laura as well, and I think we piggybacked really well in transitioning into the same approach. And, you know, it doesn't really do any good to be, you know, aggressive with people, you know, when really all they need to do is be educated. Give them a chance to remedy, and if they don't, then we have tools that we can use to be more aggressive with it if we need to. And I always inform them of that as well. I say, you know, I could have done this, but I'm here to let you know that, you know, you've got 1 week to take care of this, or 2 weeks, or whatever it might be. So, you know, I was at a business today, lighting issue. They're having problems with their electrician trying to get these lights off. And, you know, I told them, I said, we're kind of done playing the nice guy here, or so I'm told. So we've got to get this handled. So I'm supposed to call him. I'm driving by there tonight to see if those lights are off. And I'm going to call him on his personal cell phone tonight, let him know. And we're going to go from there. So just working with people, and that really gets things done for all of us. So it takes a little more time, but the results are better.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Okay, thank you.
This takes us to discussions. Ms. Corley, establishing standards of conduct for elected officials.
We had put this on hold for a while in order for the trustees to give me any comments that they had, and I tried to incorporate most of those comments. As you can see, some of the areas will need additional discussion. Y'all have to come, I guess, to some sort of consensus to give me further direction. And I highlighted the changes that I made in red. Hopefully those showed up like that.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate all the work you've done. Thank you. One item that I suggested some changes and nothing was done was item 1I. You know, it is the responsibility of each member to publicly share substantive information which he or she has received from the town manager and staff members that is relevant to a matter under consideration by the board. And again, that addresses some aspects of the problem, but I basically wrote down some stuff I want to share with the board, just because I believe it's bigger and more important than that. The item, I think, is meant to address equality of information. That's certainly how I believe it. The concerns that have been expressed in the past by several BOT members.
unfortunately, in my opinion, it fails to note that a root cause is that there are too many BOT members engaging in private discussions with the town manager and members of the town staff on a regular basis. My personal opinion is that there should be no frequent regular private discussions taking place, i.e. weekly or more often than weekly, with any members of the BOT by the town manager, members of the staff. Via email and during regularly scheduled BOT meetings, obviously, in my view, is the best way for us to get the information we need. So, CIRSA in the past has indicated that to the maximum extent practical, all board members should be provided the same information at the same time, i.e., once again, email and regularly scheduled BOT meetings, so they may have an equal footing in terms of understanding the background and status regarding key town matters on which they should be knowledgeable and might be expected at some point to vote. The proposal that individual members publicly share substantive information, quote unquote, seems untimely and non-responsive to the core concerns I've expressed. In my opinion, it should be the responsibility of the town manager to provide a summary of town matters discussed and information presented at any such meetings so that all members receive that information in a timely manner, and then individual board members doing it publicly or only what they determine to be substantive information leaves an awful lot of room for interpretation, in my view. Publicly, I assume, would be a board meeting. I don't know where else they would be expressing the information, but again, I would like to make sure everybody gets the same information as much as possible. I don't see individual BOT members as the appropriate source of up-to-date or information for other BOT members. More to the point, I do believe the town manager should be the focal point for information and update on town matters that are of interest and importance to BOT members. It would seem that the town manager's report, an agenda item for every meeting we have, would be the appropriate place to report to the full BOT on any meetings held with BOT members where subjects that might come up for future discussion or vote by the full BOT would be addressed, along with a summary of any key details related to each subject. For example, I recently received an email and had a telephone discussion with the town manager related to a positive meeting he recently held with Craig Dossie, Executive Director of El Paso County Developmental Services, something I was particularly interested in, mentioned numerous times, and I deeply appreciated the feedback I received and the efforts of the town manager to engage in such important outreach on water issues. I fully expect the town manager to discuss this issue during his comments tonight, and if not, I intended to just mention it in passing in my BOT comments portion of the agenda and invite the town manager to go in more detail for the benefit of other board members as he saw fit. The bottom line, in my opinion, is equality of information requirements would best be served by disclosure requirements for any such BOT member discussions so that the town manager and town staff know that we all want to understand what it is that's being talked about that could come up for a vote in here. And that's my commentary. Thank you.
I had some thoughts on this as well. I've actually given a lot of thought to this, mainly because I was so adamant against there was nothing like this actually, but a code of conduct ethics that was presented to this current board about a year and a half ago when we were sworn in. I agree wholeheartedly with the intent and the goal behind what we're trying to accomplish with this. I guess to touch on or to summarize what Trustee Murphy highlighted, I think we can beat this thing silly by adding 100 other things or removing other, and we're not going to include everything, which is difficult because some things listed in here we touch very, very broadly, very general. Other items we hone in very, very specific on, which is confusing to me as someone reading it and having to ultimately vote on if we want to do something like this, but also to highlight exactly what we're trying to do. The biggest concern I have with the version as presented, and I think we're going to have to continue our discussions, or at least that'd be my goal, is when we start getting into the territory of saying when and how we're going to authorize this board to remove members. There's very specific state statute that says when and how and if a trustee or an elected official or an appointed official can be removed from office. So when we start dabbling in adding or subtracting things that the state statute says that we can and cannot do, I think that's some very muddy water that we want to tread lightly in. Trustee Medlicott, I am drawing a blank on the word that it's like a companion document to this. When you were doing initial research with CIRSA, it was almost like an operations or a rules of procedure. You know, where I see this document as the broad or general document of this code of ethics, but a rule of procedure that is a companion document that would go hand in hand with this to highlight some of the things that and concerns that Trustee Murphy had. As far as quality of information, how we operate and interact with each other. What I would personally like to see is that companion document, those rules of procedure drawn up and presented alongside with this, so that we may be able to fill in the gap and reference one and the other to make sure that we really have a full picture of what we're entering into here. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Question for Ms. Corley. You had wanted to do some research on rules of procedure. How is that going? Did it go
I have a lot of examples, so
Okay.
rules vary greatly. So I don't
I'm
know.
sure.
And just like these, you know, that was an example in a certain town and a situation that arose and why they maybe address very specific things. I don't know what's the best way to handle rules of procedure. You want to take a stab at it and send it around, or
How many examples do you have?
a folder.
Alright.
I could do that. I could send around examples, and you could tell me parts that you like of it. I could try to compile them. What do y'all think is the best way to?
I'd like to look at the examples and we can kind
Bring it up
of
again.
a la carte it and maybe come up with something workable.
Okay.
It will probably take us several months to go back and forth with that.
Okay.
Wow, that's quite a process. You know, I think that we're really making a mountain out of a molehill here. You know, I know that Ms. Corley, you're very busy. We're all very busy because we all have full-time jobs outside of the board. And we also are members of the board that have common sense and are adults and are professional. So I think that we can kind of get wrapped around the axle a little bit too much. And maybe if we could maybe keep it, you know, not much more of a longer process than what we've already been through, that'd be great.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I just think a comment, and I agree with my colleague 100%, is maybe by accident we might have lost our objective, and sometimes simpler is better. We're coming to the end of the year, obviously, and the intent is not to generate days and hours and folders of work. We have a new board coming on in April. We might want to designate something very simple and look, if we can get this done prior, that's fantastic, and if we don't, we've set a good foundation for that new board to finish up. That's something we can carry on to future boards. But I don't think we should make this a 2-year process by any stretch of the imagination.
I would say I agree. I don't think this needs to drag out for 2 years. But I'd also say, as I have on many occasions, we shouldn't vote something in just to vote something in. So it needs to be done right and thoroughly. And if that means it waits until spring, then that may be what it needs to be. But I would agree, you don't need to spend the entire month of December researching rules of procedure.
So
Unless you want to.
So what's my direction? To
Provide us with a couple examples, maybe, for now.
Yeah, do you have like a prioritized list of ones you like? I mean, I'm sure you're gonna read through all of them, but are there some good ones that
Yeah,
rise
so
to the top that we could
pick a few
pick
and
2 or 3 that,
Okay.
yeah. I think that's appropriate.
I think it's a starting point,
Yeah.
and then maybe once everybody's read it at the next level, then we can be very adamant, hey, let's go in this direction, do this or do this.
Well, and I would say to the board that, you know, these are working documents. If we pass something and it's not workable, if it's clunky and doesn't, we can always change it. It's not, you know, nope, it's the way we have to do it. It's the living document, as much as I hate that term, but.
Yeah, I think the secret is common sense, professionals, respect, those are the magic terms. And if we abide by that, I don't think it matters what is or isn't on whatever we determine. I think everybody will follow that. I agree with you.
Maybe Ms. Corley needs to be emailed specifically what is too specific and what is too vague in your
Sure.
mind.
Sure.
In the one I've proposed already? Okay, perfect.
Murphy, any comments?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to the second discussion item, 2018 budget discussion and the setting of a special meeting. Ms. Smith.
You've been working nonstop since Saturday.
Well, you know, I'm kind of locked myself out of my office Friday night. So I've been working on paper and I couldn't get to my computer till today, which is part of the reason you reports were a little bit late.
On the back of the napkin here.
They really are on my desk. Our meeting workshop wasn't a meeting, it was a workshop Saturday. We went over the changes to the proposed budget format of adding the lease debt service and setting up the capital project fund for projects and taking those out of our individual departments and funds so that we had a clear picture of what that looked like by department rather than having all the capital in there. I did go through today. I, as the treasurer, had a concern with all of the numbers flowing around. And we've had numbers from several different sources. And when we're talking about the budget document, I get concerned because I don't have time or knowledge of where those numbers are coming from and I can't verify them. So that's what I tried to do today and what I sent you earlier. And I summarized the major thing that came up on Saturday was the step in grade salary for police officers and their benefits. So I took each year and summarized what it would look like as you, I think Trustee Murphy requested 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56,000. I broke those out into what's actually budgeted for 2018. And then additional salary costs, and it says here without cutting salaries. That's because if you apply the new SIG to some of the existing ranges, some of the officers are over what that SIG comes to. And I'm assuming you're not going to want to cut those salaries, so I just added those back. There's also an additional tax cost when you raise salaries, and that's reflected there. There was talk about FPPA and all of the officers joining that and coming out of our current ICMA. The problem with, not problem, but it was said that's 4%, you know, we give 5 to ICMA and that's a 1% savings. But it isn't, because not everybody in the police department participates in ICMA, and they would be required to participate in FPPA. Too many initials I know, but I'm sorry. So just, and it isn't a huge amount, but you know, the additional retirement cost for that. There was also that's why percentages are so misleading sometimes. It showed 1.4%, and then like the 1% difference between standard and FPPA for death and disability, and that was really wrong because our standard budget, and these items that I'm showing are just for the sworn officers, the 17 sworn officers. That would include Commander Burke down to our newest officer that isn't here yet, that doesn't quite exist yet. It does not include Chief Shirk because he does not participate in this, and it does not include the non-sworn office staff people. But the additional death and disability cost in switching to FPPA, which is a requirement if you go into their pension, and our current standard
disability cost is substantial. It runs around $10,000 a year. So the total additional salary and benefit cost on the summary sheet shows you that at 46,000, it would be around 47.9 additional dollars a year for 2018. These are all for 2018. And then 48, and every $2,000 increment after that goes up about $25,000. So if you were to do the 52, which has been talked about a lot, it would cost an additional $130,000 in 2018. And having said that, and there's a sheet behind here that shows we can finance some things, we can cut some things. But you are making an investment in the police department. You're also committing future boards and funds because these amounts are only going to grow. I never say the word exponential a lot. Over the years, every time you have an increase. And on your individual sheets, it shows you the different rates and how they look. So you could see, like, year by year, if nobody leaves, you know, where they'll be at salary-wise, based on where the SIG starts. And I'm sorry, SIG is step in grade. I hope it's not step in grade, because then it's all wrong. But then it'd be a SAG, so it's, but I took the liberty, because we did a lot of discussion around short-term leasing, and we did discussions about things we can cut from the budget. The police budget is about 1.8 million. Of that, about 1.7, 1.5 or so is salary and benefits in the existing 2018 budget. So there's only 200,000 in operations in the police budget. So it's not like you can cut the police budget to fund more salaries. But we could cut, I went through some of the projects, and this is just my list, and I ran it by Chris, and he was like, you know, whatever, that's fine. But if we cut the Wi-Fi project for downtown, the pocket park in Washington, the dock extension at the lake, the bathrooms at the lake, and the electronic ticketing system, that would be $153,000 in cuts. And then we would have to add back the lease payment for the $67,000. I'm going on a 5-year lease here for those two items, which would add back $14,000. So the difference with the changes to the budget would be $139,000. So we could, like, boom, take that $139,000. You can take this sheet, apply it across, and see what what you want to do. We can cut more. We can do less. I mean, again, it's a flowing document, so you all have to decide where you want to go with this. And you have to decide if you want to cut more or less, if you want to do starting SIG at 46 or 48 or 50 or 52 or 56 or, these are your decisions that you have to make. Because of the complexity of this, we should have started this way back, like May, June, and been working on this since then. So we're trying to push this at the board's request to get this straight so it can take effect Jan 1. I will note that on the step and grades, those officers received their increases on their anniversary dates, not on Jan 1. So there's a little bit of variance in these figures. These figures encompass like the whole year. So I'm open for anyone's discussion on the matter. At Saturday's meeting, you all said you would like to have another budget workshop meeting. And just because Trustee Elliott wasn't there, I have to have 10 days to post before we go to approval for the budget. So for the December 4th meeting, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the budget has to be approved legally by December 31st, or the state will withhold our sales tax, which we really don't want to have. The mill levy to the county has to be approved by December 15th, or the county will withhold our property taxes. That's how they get your attention. They withhold your money. The next scheduled board meeting, the second meeting in December, is December 18th, because I believe the 15th is a Friday, so then the 18th would be a Monday. So technically would be too late for the mill levy if you waited till then to pass the budget. I don't think the county's gonna scream too much about 2 days, but legally, those are the drop dead deadline dates, so you're all aware. So if you don't have the changes or don't agree on the changes, we need to set another workshop as soon as possible, or you could even set a special meeting just for the budget discussion, and then if it was posted as a meeting, you could make a decision there to go forward. That would be time to redo all the budget documents and get all the legal postings done. So it's kind of in your court. I'm open to questions on these documents and when you all, or how you all want to approach another meeting, another workshop, or what you want to do.
Can you clarify again? You said you had to post the budget.
I'm sorry, I have to post notice that we're going to approve the budget. It has to be posted in the paper and the website and all of our posting places.
10 days before we vote on it?
It actually has to be posted twice. You post it, like I normally post it on a Friday and a Sunday, just to catch what readers I can.
You also mentioned that these are based on their anniversary date.
Not, the numbers you have are based on
Right.
an annual salary.
Right, but it actually takes
they-
effect with the officers.
At this point in time, unless you change the procedure is that they receive their increases on their anniversary date. Now, if you approve a SIG, you wouldn't, or you would? You wouldn't. So no increases would happen until their anniversary date, and then they get the new SIG amount.
Okay.
A question? Go ahead.
No, I have comments, but I'm gonna let the questions go first, and I promise not to keep everybody here all night. But I will let the questions go first, and then...
First a comment, then one quick question. Comment, thank you very much for all of the work that you put into this, because I understand that we gave you direction to do this very quickly. I do want to commend everybody for the dialogue that's happened. I think every aspect, every aisle has been incredibly positive, and everybody trying to figure out a way to make it happen and what that looks like and make it work. So thank you. Question would be to the chief. With these new revisions, specifically the 52 that seems to be the one that you referenced, are those numbers something where you feel that would make our department more competitive in the marketplace that we're seeing, given that we've had an open position for 12 plus months?
It would certainly put us on top of several other agencies that we're competing against. Yes. And so would 50 also put us above some of those other agencies.
And the support from the officers with the FPPA versus the current option, are you all in favor of that option?
This has to be, if the city, just to give you a quick summary, if the city approves us or the town approves us to move forward, we then have to have, I believe it's a 66% vote of our own police officers, and I'm not included in that, to approve it. My understanding is they did an informal poll, and the votes were there to have the process done.
Okay.
And then it takes a number of months. It doesn't start January 1st.
Sure.
We have to have FPPA come down. They do all sorts of work behind it. They work with HR, the town, make this happen. So, yes, the response is yes. Their majority are behind this process. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Maybe I can set a foundation and then questions. I mean, first of all, Pam, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody, and I think Mr. Bishop did an excellent job, and I was a little grumpy on Saturday, and for that I still apologize. This didn't start right now. This started years ago, but it's gotten to a head right now. And I think it's very important to note that we got some fires, and we don't know where we need to be, and it's not just about police. We've got our public works. This is a town affair, but my perception as a trustee is we can't play ready, fire, aim. I mean, our back is against the wall right now with our growth, with all the box stores coming in and what have you. If we lose people, it's not as simple as we think. You know, like we discussed as far as having an emergency plan, but that worries me, it worries residents. And in all fairness, in this room, there's some people that live here and there's some people that don't. But to come back to it, with our officers, to retain our officers and ensure that the younger officers, as they grow in this community, for the safety and security and well-being, that's my new mantra. We saw this with the fire, 70% approval on a mill levy, which is pretty much unlimited and a lot of money. And I'm sure they're gonna do a great job. And the greatest respect to the chief and his management. This is not for you. This is for the officers. I'm worried about the officers and what they're getting paid. And to compare that Castle Rock gets this and Denver gets this, CU in the Colorado Springs just posted jobs, officers starting 55 with more benefits than we offer. When we talk about the FPPA, I am very gracious by what the town managers put on the board, but then the other side of me says, this is a give me. Police officers get this, but I don't want anybody in this town to think that we're targeting this one group. It's not about me, it's about the residents and safety. We're growing, we don't control that. That's gonna happen. But I don't wanna have to look in the mirror a month from now, a year from now, when we're down 3 officers and somebody gets hurt and go, boy, we did the wrong thing. I'm one person, I mean, there's a board here. And whatever they decide, I'll respect that. My objective tonight is I want to see the 52K implemented, signed off tonight. There's some tweaking on the budget, but it's time to stop this discussion and move on. We want to hire an officer. Right now, we get a list of officers, and we get 3, and I can't speak for the management and the PD, but it's the lesser of evils. And we're finding they're not even up to the par. How cool would it be to have 10 people and go, these guys are amazing. God, now how do we pick this? You know what? We ain't there. We're not there. I mean, you know, we see the other agencies and you look, they're short and what have you. The numbers are very skewed on what we're talking about, but rather than comparison, everybody wants to be in Monument. Everybody wants to be here. Look at the cost of housing, what's happened here. Look, people want lower competitive cost housing for the teachers, which I agree, we want people here. But there's certain things we can't control, but guess what? We'll get that lower cost of housing if we don't have law enforcement and stuff starts happening. Because I don't think bad guys discriminate. I don't think they're gonna go, I wanna go to Denver, or I wanna go here. This is a great place, because you're on the freeway and you're gone. So I'm just promoting to my colleagues here that we do the 52. This has been going on for years. This is my 6th year. So anybody that says this is new, that's baloney. And you're not saying that, but I'm just saying this has been going on. But it's time to pull the trigger. It's time to pull the trigger. You know, another 6 months, another 4 months. We have the money. We're looking at the budget, the proposed $9 million of projects, and we're talking about $140,000.
Those are not all funded projects.
I beg your pardon?
I said those aren't funded projects.
You know what? They're on the page for a budget of proposed funding. If I see that number, that's what you're looking for. We talked about the maintenance. Well, there has to be some discussions. That's great. I want a maintenance building. Is it $3 million? I don't know that. But it's sitting on there. Why is it sitting on there?
It's sitting on there as an unfunded project.
You know what? It's wants and needs. I wish I could write a check for this town for $20 million, but I can't. And anybody here who's in business, you know, we come up with projects and we're off base sometimes, and I think we gotta tweak it and get real numbers and we'll make these things happen. But doing all this growth and all these projects in debt and not having police officers here, it don't fly. I will share Jackson Creek, a lot of people there were under the premise that the mill levy for the fire was inclusive of police. And now there's some unhappy people. Now, whether they should have known or not, I'm not throwing, it doesn't matter. But the bottom line is, you know, the people here need to feel safe and secure. They're talking about more schools, the kids and what have you. in the greatest respect. It's nice to make decisions of where you want to spend and where you don't, especially when you don't live here. But I live here, he lives here, he lives here, she lives here, he lives here, and he lives here. And it's the board's decision.
It absolutely is. I would like to correct one thing. In 2015, we sat down with all the officers and the chief, and we basically, it was Sergeant Owens invented this step-in grade. And we gave everybody increases at that point to get them up to the step-in grade. So that was 15. And now we're talking about year 18, so it's 3 years. It's not, but it's been talked about for.
Every person in this town is valued, and I want Tom to know, it's like my focus and dedication and craziness on this side, it's gonna be the same for his department. But I can't do 20 fires at once. I don't think anybody in the board can. But you know what? Nobody's forgetting about them, and we're gonna address that. And one of the things that we discussed, and I promote this, we're gonna put a committee together, we're gonna bring a third party in, and we're gonna evaluate. If people are not being paid correctly, we're gonna get them paid correctly. And if someone's getting overpaid, we're not gonna punish them because it's not their fault. But we got good employees, and we wanna keep them. But right now, and we can all agree to disagree, but there's a difference between a police officer who's carrying a gun, who can get in a fight or get shot at, and somebody who's coming 8 to 5. And if you want to argue it, we'll do it. But it's the reality. You can smile to it, but it's a reality.
No,
Amen.
smiling to that.
So I'm done. Thank you.
I 100% support our law enforcement, and we all desire that we have 100% top talent here and enough officers and working equipment that, you know, that is available, cars, trucks, what have you. I will say, though, that I wasn't at the budget meeting because I was on business in New York, and in spite of previous conversations, this particular scenario is a little bit of a surprise to me. Therefore, I'm not ready to vote tonight on an X% increase for the officers. I do believe that we do need to do a doodle poll and get a budget meeting, a budget workshop, one more scheduled for perhaps next week early, so that we can discuss our options further in regards to what we could do to help be a little bit more competitive in the marketplace. And then from there, we schedule when we're going to vote on the budget.
I appreciate very much, as I've said before to you, all the work you do and have done. Everything's very impressive, and particularly what you've cranked out since our meeting on Saturday. Thank you. I'd like to ask the town manager, the list of items that add up to the amount that we'll cover with about 9,000 more, I guess. The amount to pay 52,000. I assume you had something to do with that list, and I want to make sure that the items on there are truly what you put as the dispensable on the list of items that I see here, like under parks and stuff. I see things that weren't listed that are still there being funded. Well, we're not going to do the electronic ticketing, et cetera, et cetera. I just want you to tell me, Chris, a question to you. Are you comfortable to hit the 52 and make the cuts that you're talking about here? Is that the best thing from your perspective to do? If the board were to want to do that, does that make sense to you as a town manager and something you could live with, truly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Again, thank you very much for all the hard work here.
I've already spoke, so I don't want to speak again before anybody else has the opportunity.
Ms. Smith, you mentioned at the workshop that we could pass the mill levy prior to the budget.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry, the mill levy for the town.
Mm-hmm.
I said that we could put it on the December 4th ballot, that when the budget passes, this will be the mill levy. That's kind of a workaround. technically, you're not supposed to pass the mill levy until you pass the budget. And like I say, if it's a matter of 2 or 3 days, I doubt that the county is gonna look at that too harshly. You know, if we get it on a Monday instead of a Friday,
I don't want
you
them to
know.
come back and surprise, you missed it by
Yeah, no, you're
48
not.
hours, you don't
You know.
get property taxes.
We've never done it late before, and
Yeah,
if
I
I could
understand.
actually call and double check on that, and check with the county and make sure that if we did it on the 18th instead of the 15th, they wouldn't, like. go
Pam's
for it.
being too nice, you don't wanna do that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what she wants to say.
That's what I'm asking. Okay. So really, we have the 4th and 11th Mondays of December to get it done.
If you do it on a Monday, I mean,
Or
Does that-
in
whatever.
before the 15th, which is Friday, right?
Does that include the 10 days?
well, I
Which-
would need to, so we'd need to make a decision on it, probably by the 4th or 5th of December, so I would have time to put the document together and get the postings done.
So does this increase require a motion of the board, or do we just give you direction, put it in the budget, and then we vote on the budget?
And I'd like to ask a part 2 to that question. Do we have the capability to make a motion, and if it passes, that although we haven't approved the budget yet, this proposal is an absolute that cannot be modified, that will be in the budget?
Well, if you give her that direction, then you would vote on it when you pass the budget. I guess I didn't understand the second question.
There's a lot of other things, we're working on the budget, I think we're all in agreement there. I'm looking personally, as trustee, as an objective, to close this sector out, because in the greatest respect, I don't know what we're gonna talk about at the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting. It's ridiculous, but that's only my opinion, only my opinion. So if the board, by majority, feels that this proposal at the 52 and based on the town managers, that dollar amount we can make happen, can we implement that so that is an absolute for the budget?
I think there's 2 separate things that we're looking at here. One, we got the budget, which we got to do.
Correct.
And then we have this, kind of goes with the budget, but it's kind of a whole separate thing too.
Right.
And I agree with what Kelly's saying is, when we're talking about budget, we need to look at how and where, and we're talking cuts and things like that. What I've heard you all say this evening, Pam, Chief, Town Manager Lowe, is that 52 is a number that is going to put us in a far better position to achieve what we need to achieve. But also that 52 is a number that is absolutely doable. As I've said, last week as well, I said, that money is there, we just need to figure out how to make it happen. What I would propose is a motion to approve the increase at the 52K level tonight and not designate where those cuts are going, because we're going to have the budget workshop, as Trustee Elliott suggested, where we can fine-tune exactly what we want to cut to make that happen. But to solidify that this 52, we've been told tonight that it's the magic number and it's doable. Let's make it happen, and let's make it happen right here, right now. And then we'll find out what to cut. We know the money's there. You've said the money's there. You've highlighted just a small fraction of what we can do to make that happen. I think there's other options as well that maybe doesn't include or don't include cutting specific items. So
I guess my concern is that the board doesn't normally set salaries. So,
well, we can tonight.
So I'm gonna ask a hypothetical, and I'm gonna be a realist. In the next 30 days, 45 days, if, quote, since the board doesn't get involved in this, and we lose officers, and an accident happens, and you get 3,000–4,000 people from the east side that file a lawsuit against the town of Monument, who's taking ownership, who's getting canned? And when Sursa drops us, so I'm asking you this.
It's not out of the view of the board.
The board is to direct the town staff. It is not for the town staff to direct the board. And this has been going on for years, and it's got to stop. And maybe today's the day to do it. It's got to stop.
I think we can talk about this at a budget workshop next week where maybe we're a little bit more informed and we're making a little bit more informed decision on this, if indeed we are going to get involved with this. Since
Instead of a
typically
workshop,
the
you could
trustees.
also have a special meeting and you could vote at that meeting where you can't vote at a workshop. Isn't that
I would like to see right now, as your attorney with experience, I would like to see where the board cannot delegate this right now. Because the last attorney couldn't give an answer, and he's not here today. I want an answer right now.
So you want an answer as to whether you can set all of the police officers' salaries tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if I could interject, I think what Ms. Corley states is correct. Typically, and I've not ever seen a lot of boards, well, I've never even heard of a board that sets individual salaries of particular job titles throughout the town. So, but that being said, I mean, the board can do what the board wants to do.
I'm gonna make a comment. I got elected by the residents, and the residents are gonna be on my ass when shit hits the roof. Not you. You, in the greatest respect, employee, 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 employee. I got elected. I don't get paid a red nickel. The board has the right to do this. And every time the board tries to do something, it's a left turn, a right turn to delay. I mean, I'm up to here. I'm on my 6th year, and this BS, it's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. The town hall does not regulate what happens in this town.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
A comment. Why don't we do this? Why don't we direct the treasurer to implement the 52,000 level in addition to the FPPA costs into a revised budget that then we can workshop to make whole, because we have to make it whole, and then we'll vote on that. So we're giving that direction, that this is where, for the safety and security of the town of Monument, this is where we want the department to be. But we're not passing a motion, we're just giving direction,
Right.
which is our purview.
And I look for my colleagues, but I am gonna say I'm very bothered that I cannot get a legal answer on that, and I'm on the record. I cannot get a legal answer, and when I get a response, well, I don't think the board has this empowerment, that's a bigger flag to me.
Well, Mr. Bornstein, the only reason I stepped in to answer that is that I think what the typical practice is for boards not to set individual salaries for individual things, but not that you obviously have superintending authority to do that.
And the typical scenario is not us losing 3 police officers and 1 down. So I agree with you. But you know what?
And there are many municipalities that do set that.
We can't get officers right now. And we have people interviewing.
I guess what I'm saying is I thought Trustee Medlicott had it encapsulated very well.
I think the need for urgency, and I'm gonna come back again, when you don't live in the town and you make decisions, it's okay. But I live in the town, and it's gonna impact me and everybody sitting up here. So I'll do with what the board suggests, but I'm very adamant about this. It's just like, it must be great to write rules and implement and spend money and just go, "But that doesn't affect me." But you know what? There's like, what, 7,000 people that it affects. You know, and I encourage everybody to take this home tonight and think about it. So I will go with what the board suggests. If that's what we'd like to do, then we will do that.
So will you restate? Go ahead.
I'd like the opportunity just to build off, you've been here 6 years. Why did this come up in October? I haven't heard anything from the police department on this concern? And where does 52 come from?
Comes from comparison of other agencies and keeping.
Where is
good-
that comparison?
You know what? I'm not gonna go down.
I'm just
this-
asking.
I'm not going down this road in the greatest respect. I'm not. I'm not gonna go. All I'm gonna say is, when I see us paying for a little floatable dock of $30,000 and we wanna buy a water fountain for $70,000 and things like this, and we don't pay these guys, shame on you. Shame on you.
What is that about? Shame on me for what?
Well, shame on you.
For
That
being
you-
curious for the
That you don't
information?
stand up for this and you
I
question
didn't
where
say I
the
didn't
numbers
stand
come
up
from.
for it.
Gentlemen,
I'm done.
can we give direction to the treasurer to implement or put into the budget the 52,000 level in addition to the FPPA costs? And at the next workshop, we will make the budget whole and we'll pass it and we'll be done with it.
Not a motion, but I'll second that direction. I think that's great.
I agree as well. I just don't know where the 52,000 came from.
I could shed light into that. So at Saturday's workshop, they had presented, Mr. Bishop had put together a variety of different options on what it would look like. It's the 46K versus like 58K, and there was a couple other numbers in there. I had asked that they present options of everything in between, because they had jumped several $1,000 increments, and just to show us a full picture of what it would look like between the 46K, which is where we were essentially at, to 58K. And I think the 52 falls right smack dab in the middle, if it looks accurate to me.
Thank you.
So, I mean, that's where I would assume the 52 came, as it appears in the packet.
Is-
So, am I wrong by that assumption? Is that kind of right in the middle?
What was that? Then?
A little bit of clarity. So, your instruction to me is to put in the SIG at 52 as the starting SIG salary, and then that goes forward to everybody. And to put that in increased benefits and taxes and stuff in the budget, but not do anything else around cuts or financing or change any other documents, and then we will look at that at the budget special meeting. It would probably work better. And then decide where you're gonna cut or what you wanna finance, or do you want me to implement this small list and see how it falls out, or what do you want me to do?
I think what Trustee Elliott said was she'd like an opportunity to think about and consider the ways we would need to deal with this after she had the question answered to why 52. And if there's a way to highlight what the town manager has just reaffirmed per the question I asked him, as I assume that the items that you've added up to the 139 are what he believes, and he said so. He believes they're the most dispensable of the items on that list that we were looking at that might in fact not be funded. Well, I think Trustee Elliott and I would agree with her. Would like a chance to look at the bigger list, look at the recommended, and make sure we're comfortable with what the cuts really are going to affect and mean versus something else that might have been included that isn't viewed as dispensable. I think it's all just a matter of feeling better about what we vote on and pass, and I think that makes sense.
Okay. So the amended budget that I will send to you in the next couple of days will show that it'll end up showing a negative on your front page, and then I'll rework the capital items. I will highlight things that I proposed here, and I'll highlight the changes in the police budget and any cuts, and then you all can go from there.
Now, you requested from the board as far as us supply you with items that maybe we thought should be removed, or would that help you before you send a revision?
It would probably help, because it would be an individual direction, and I can't take individual direction, but it would probably help if you all made your own list up and actually went through them and came to that meeting with your list in hand saying, I don't think this is as important as this kind of thing. I don't want to do short-term financing. Can we cut and not do short-term financing? Things like of that nature, I think, would make it go faster. smoother, better.
And I think that's clear direction on
Mhm.
this, and I haven't heard a single trustee up here or town staff say that they're not in support of our police department getting a pay increase. I think it's making sure that we do it responsibly and thoroughly. I think that's fantastic. In the interim, it might be wise to see what we need to, do we need a resolution? Do we need, I mean, what do we need to formally increase the pay? At a resolution to formally increase that pay. So that may be something that may need to be started as far as getting drawn up
Okay, to accompany the budget.
to accompany the budget, so
Okay.
it's simultaneously passed.
Okay.
And I think that would make sense to prohibit or to stop any further delay on both of these topics. Pay increase, which must happen, and budget, which absolutely must happen as well.
I understand ensuring that the salary is at a certain amount, not just allocating the money in the budget for it.
Correct?
Got it.
We need to formally increase pay. So whatever that needs to do, or whatever we need to do to make that happen.
So we probably need to decide on a date pretty quickly, because we want to then post the meeting as soon as possible, because I don't think all of us sitting up here should be the ones that are solely determining what is going to be axed from what is going to be developed in the town. We need people's input.
We can have the changes to you by tomorrow night.
What kind of, any date suggestions?
Do you want to have it done by the 4th? Or are we going to shoot?
I would love to have it done by the 4th, simply because getting everybody, when the farther into December
Let's
it
do it.
gets, the
What
harder
about-
to get
So
people.
if we have, excuse me, if we have next week in the evening sometime,
Mhm.
we'll have to doodle pull it, or
What about
Mhm.
Saturday? Would Saturday work for anybody?
what is it, the
This
sixth?
Second. Second,
Oh.
December 2nd.
December 2nd, I could do that.
Yeah.
December
We'll
2nd.
make
could
it
do
happen,
that.
yeah.
All right.
December 2nd.
Any conflicts with town staff?
Okay.
That'll be 7 a.m.
Why are you sleeping in?
05:30.
So do you wanna do it like 9 to
Yeah.
11 or 12?
I like the
whatever.
5:30, that's it.
And do you wanna call it
Participation if that happens.
a special meeting versus a workshop? So you
Yes,
can vote.
yes, so we can vote. If that's what's
Okay.
gotta be done, we need to be able to do it.
And then
Laura, will Miss Hogan, will town hall be available?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Outstanding.
okay. Any other questions or directions?
Thank you.
Thank you so
Pam.
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, at the budget workshop, we had additional discussion items that are not on the agenda. The Facilities Committee and the Compensation Committee.
Okay. Chris, was that in regard to the,
Well, what I discussed was that in some communities, they will have a committee where they will appoint 2 board members and then some staff folks, and then I would envision that, and in a world where perfect, which it clearly isn't, what you would do is do an analysis of all positions, not just one over everything else, but at least what I would suggest, so that some of our folks aren't, that it's an ongoing discussion rather than a immediate, you have to do something immediately, gun to your head type thing, where you'd have a compensation committee, and that compensation committee would have a couple of members of the board, but then the other board members have to trust those 2 to do a lot of that heavy lifting for them. But then that committee would then usually give a recommendation of, and then that's fit into the larger budget picture, so you don't have to kind of attack it the way that we've had to this year. So Same thing with capital improvements. There's many towns will have a committee. Again, a number of two. Probably want to pick a different two, just to spread the wealth around a little bit. So that committee can then review some of these larger capital projects, and then have a little bit more robust information to work with, and then fold that into the budget document. So I think both of those would be helpful if we could agree on a group, and it wouldn't have to be that intensive, but it'd probably begin in the process kind of where Pam begins, so that you're kind of doing that at the same time, and then those items that make it to the final budget, you could at least say, hey, we had, in this case it'd be 4 of you that were part of both of those decision-making processes, and so that would come in. And I think I took Trustee Murphy's credit. That was more what he described in terms of the public facilities committee meeting. Yes, Trustee Murphy, you've finally given your due. So that was something that when he said that, I went, well, I've had towns that I've worked in where we've had that same exact thing, and so then you all would feel, and those 2 board members would have the responsibility to be keeping you all apprised of how those discussions are going, and then they're folded into the budget kind of in a little bit more sedate or calmer way to get them into the item earlier. So I don't need any direction other than the fact that what we'd do is just probably, once this budget's passed, while it's still fresh in all of our minds, agree to have those 2 committees, appoint 2 members, and then we'll go from there for the next budget cycle.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Middlecott. Was there another thing on there that I missed?
No, I think those were
The only 2. Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Per municipal code 2.04.003, 2JB, public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening, trustees.
Good evening.
Yes. Maybe. Neighbors. We all live here, right? I agree. Any chance I could have more than 3 minutes, just by a minute or 2, if I need it?
Not tonight.
Okay. It's good to see you all again. I come here living in Village Center Estates, and we're requesting to have a dialogue with you guys in the next meeting, if we could do that. Very much like what you had going on, what I just observed right now. We don't want to necessarily make a presentation. And when I say we, guys, this is nothing, I don't want to look at this like I'm the Metro District. I'm a citizen, okay? I'm your neighbor, okay? You're my trustees. And we're looking for some resolve here. We need your help, okay? How many people in Colorado, let alone Monument, are willing to say, I'll raise my property taxes? I mean, that's unheard of, right? I mean, we're willing to do that, but again, in comparison, when you're comparing these officers' salaries, we've compared metro districts without commercial, 50 mils is standard. Going beyond that's a little crazy. It's a little insane. It's a little insane for resale, okay? Because people look at that and go, why is that so high? I mean, there's some factors to look at here, and some factors that we need your help in dialoguing and saying, hey, where are you guys at, and where are you stuck on some of the things, and where are we at, and where are we stuck, and how can we come to, instead of making more wounding and more division, can we bring some unity to our community? That's the spirit that I'm coming to you into here tonight, and that's the spirit that we want to talk to you on another presentation, where we can dialogue and talk to you guys, because we want you guys to make the decisions, okay? And say, how can you represent us, and how can you serve us, and how can we make this work, and where are you guys stuck on some of these things, where are we stuck, and how can we come to an amicable situation to make this fiscally responsible over the next 10 or 15 years, okay? So that's what we're requesting in the next 20 minutes, is just to be able to dialogue with you, ask you some questions, let you ask us some questions, and as neighbors and citizens, figure this out, okay? Any questions on what we'd like to do, and why we're asking you for a presentation, either at the next meeting or a future meeting?
Has anything changed from the last presentation?
Yes, I think it has, you know, I mean, we're willing to make, well, we need to find out some more information from you guys, and we do have some new information to give you on what we're willing to do, but we need some information from you. That we know there was an executive meeting, we disagreed with some numbers that were given to you, and that were given to us from some estimates that we've gotten, so we'd like to go over where you guys got stuck, and where some of these numbers may be misinterpreted, or may even be wrong. Because if we're operating on false assumptions here, we're on a wrong trajectory already as soon as we take off.
Is there still open communication going on with our town staff and what have you?
At this time, we haven't. We prefer to kind of deal with you for right now. I mean, we can deal with the staff, but I mean, I in your spirit, it's kind of, you know, your decision. It's our town. I heard what you were saying. It's our town. It's our choice. It's our decision. We can get some numbers. We're not unwilling. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Romanello.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Board authorizations for December 4th agenda. Ms. Corley?
You just heard of Mr. Romanello's speech.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Any other public comments? Ms. Swearinger?
Good evening to all the trustees. Nancy Swearinger, 418 Trailhead Road. Mr. Bornstein, I believe everybody was quite aware that you're adamant about the $52,000 a year for the police officers. My only question to you is, who in Monument can afford to buy housing at $52,000 a year? And how many of you have voted down affordable housing or multifamily housing in regard to being able to have police officers that can get $52,000 a year and still be able to live here? Nobody in $52,000 a year can afford to live here, especially if they happen to have a family of, you know, maybe 2 or 3. It just doesn't happen. So if you're so adamant about getting them the wages that they deserve, should you not also be as equally adamant about perhaps providing subsidized housing or affordable housing, or making it so that where they work is where they can live? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swearinger. Any other comments?
Yes, I do. I'm hesitant to bring it up because it's pretty live business, but I'll bring it up anyways. So I've been, I'm Joseph Whitman. I live here. I've been going through this plan here. I have a few questions, and some of the questions, if I can't answer them all right now, but just something to think about. So, just from this meeting today, it seems like there's a lot of planning in a vacuum. We're planning to grow. Are we planning to secure what we've already grown? We're planning to grow. Are we planning to maintain the resources that we currently have in place? Because there's a lot of talk about growth in here, but none of these pages talk about growing our support elements that are here to keep up with our growth. So that's my first question, is do we have a growth, mentor growth model of another town that's similar to where we're at that we're following? Or else we're just going off, got a compass, our azimuth, and we're going off in the desert on our own? Or are we following, hey, this town is similar to what we are, similar to where we want to go, and that's what we're trying to do? If we are, what is that town we're trying to mirror?
The comp plan was built from a company that works with the other towns.
Yeah, it's called, I seen that, that was my other question, was, you're out of somewhere here in Colorado, right?
Delmar, or Belmar area.
Yeah. Why were they picked to give us guidance?
They have experience with our town.
So what are we trying to look like in the future? Do we know what we're trying to look like? Are we trying to look like Austin, Texas? Are we trying to look like El Paso, Texas? Are we trying to look like Flint, Michigan, Houston, Texas? What are we trying to look like when we get to where we're trying to go? And that's what my big question is. What are we trying to look like? Because if we're gonna grow, we can grow deep roots, we can grow shallow roots, I mean, that's gonna determine how successful we are as a community. So my only question is, what are we trying to look like as we're growing? And are we making sure our resources are in place to develop that growth? Because it's not in here. It talks about building infrastructure, but there's none of that, what we're trying to look like. And that would probably help a lot of anxiety that we're experiencing. What do we want to look like in the future? That is all that's the biggest question I have out of this. All right, thank you guys for
Great question. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other community comments? Seeing none, we'll move ahead. Board authorizations. Does the board want to authorize Village Center Metro District for December 4th?
I guess what I would like to see is an update of whatever information has been provided and whatever information we were using. I'd like to have, if possible, town manager be able to meet with reps from the Village Metro District and get that ironed out. And then I would hope that someone would send to the board for review whatever it is that it's going to be proposed be presented to us so we can look it over. I don't really feel like I'm equipped right now, particularly given the comments were made about the discrepancies. I don't feel like I'm equipped to make a vote. So would that be possible?
Well, in fact, the only reason it wasn't fleshed out is because they did not want staff to have any involvement, knowledge, or anything else. So,
yeah,
we stand ready to talk to anybody about their issue.
Yeah, I can't speak for the other members of the board, but that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to talk with the staff and get this information issue resolved, and then apprise us of that in terms of what they propose to show for this dialogue, I have no interest in wasting the time to do it. Just like they have no interest in talking to the staff. So the bottom line is that bothers me. Again, that's my comment.
Yes, sir. We don't take it personally. They had some questions about the data that had previously been presented to you. I don't have any other than hearsay reasons why they think that somehow you'll be able to make a better decision without our input at all. And our only suggestion was that you not respond to that other than saying, well, you can't do an end run around staff. You can disagree with them and you can present any information that you think is contrary to what they're presenting, but we all ought to be adult enough to sit down and have reasonable disagreements. And I like Forrest and the rest of those folks over there. I'm real happy to sit down with them any time they'd like, but certainly we can't help present their information to you if they won't tell us what they want to talk to you about.
All right.
We're willing to do that.
My thoughts on that, I don't ever want to limit dialogue with our neighbors. And I understand you have multiple hats just as we have multiple hats, which makes it difficult when it comes to the procedures and the way that sometimes we're forced to communicate just with those different hats on. I will always be in favor of continued dialogue on any topic with residents of this community, and I think that the moment that dialogue stops is when we have a very big problem on our hands. Additionally, I mean, you all have big decisions that you need to make, and you need our involvement in one capacity or another to make those things happen. I would say, echoing Trustee Murphy, it's important to include them in the process. If you feel or if there's a trust issue. I've had trust issues with communication in this role since day one, since before I was elected by the people to represent the community. Include us all on your communication. Our email address is on the website. You can include every one of us in the dialogue. We can't all, of course, respond to everybody, but we can be included in the dialogue and the information that you present to them to ensure or give you the peace of mind that we're getting the information as you present it or as you wish us to receive it. My only other concern would be December 4th. We got a lot going on December 4th. Realistically, when that dialogue continues, again, I think it's a must. The reality is, to get full attention and productivity, I would think it would be best after the first of the year, or at least until after this budget is passed.
Can I respond?
That's entirely up to Pro Tem on
Go
those
ahead.
sorts.
I think that would be better, because I would like to reconvene with the town and talk with the staff in a productive, healthy way. Chris, I would enjoy doing that. I don't think you and I have had that chance, and I think we should. So let's do that, and that'll give us time to get some things to you guys, and that'll be enough time, and then we could do that in January. Would that work? Would that be good? Can we do that?
Board in
Okay,
consensus?
all right. I'll reach out to you.
Yes. And just to support what Trustee Koopman says, please, we have email addresses, and keep us in the loop, and that's not to say that the town doesn't,
Correct.
but then you know it's going directly, and we're knowledgeable.
Thanks for your attention, and we're not trying to shut anybody out, but I want you to know that. That wasn't the intention at all.
Okay, thank you. Town manager report. Chris, anything?
Trustee Murphy alluded to this earlier. He's been bringing that Gazette article to every meeting for quite a while, and I'm pretty thick, so it took me a while to figure out that maybe I ought to go talk to the source of that article. So Tom, Larry, and I all met with Craig Dossey, I think it was last Friday, and we discussed kind of what they're doing in terms of this countywide planning movement for water, which obviously he has the right idea. And so the county's convening this steering committee to deal with those water issues. They felt, or Craig felt, that they were in a unique situation in that they're the only one of the people that would be invited to the table that doesn't have a dog in the fight. They don't sell water to anyone. So, and what Craig is trying to do is to have developers bring water planning, which currently they don't do a whole lot of discussion about those things. But Craig would like to formalize a larger piece, more than just the 100, 300-year rule type analysis. And so, anyway, we found that to be music to our ears, and he offered us an open invitation to appear at those steering committee meetings to listen and participate. And so we will be doing that. And but it was kind of refreshing to see, the countywide, that is where the leadership needs to come, because they touch on all of these little districts, special districts or towns throughout the county. And so they're in a unique position, I think, as kind of to connect the dots and help us so that we don't operate only dealing with our issue, and that we get some more broader input on the decisions that are being made by other districts in the county. So at the same, it's still putting straws in the same cup. So we found that to be really refreshing. I found him to be personally very engaging as somebody is who went to law school and then became a planner. So he and I are both kind of flawed in that way. So anyway, he was very personable, and it's clear that he really approaches it from the right angle, or an angle that I think is is cooperative and collaborative, which obviously that's what we want to be involved in, especially when we talk about water planning. So when we shared with him our thoughts about an Area 3 reservoir and how to connect some of these, Tri-View, ourselves, Palmer Lake, some of the folks that are in this area. I didn't forget somebody who's going to get mad at me in paper, right? Okay, Rob, add whoever I'm forgetting, but, you know, just so we could do cooperatively some planning with those groups and then put us into the larger picture countywide. So it was encouraging. Other than that, I don't have anything to add other than the written report you've all received.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Board of Trustee comments.
Following on that update, I want to once again thank the town manager for what he did. And again, it has nothing to do with how long it took. The key was you decided to do it. And I just commend you for that. I think it's the right thing to do. It makes us more informed, better represented as a community, you more aware of opportunity. It hits all the right buttons, and you were the one who decided to do it. And thank you very, very much for doing it.
I'd just like to commend everybody again for the continued dialogue. I mean, this has been really healthy for quite some time now. I think we've really honed in on a productive way to communicate and work together, even on topics where we clearly don't see eye to eye on certain things. I've just been real pleased with how we've all been able to communicate and work together and move the overall needle forward in progress here for our community. So thank you to everybody.
Chris, I had asked for a GIS report on the right-of-way, ownership right-of-ways, and you told me that they were working on it.
Drew put a really spiffy map on my desk, which I promptly have done nothing with.
Awesome. So it's done.
No, I mean, I did ask him about that very soon after we discussed it, and so it took some time for he and I to circle back around and figure out why I was asking for what I was asking for.
Right.
And so once I told him, no, I want to be able to track what we're responsible for versus other entities on roads that go through town, and even the roads within the town that, of course, we probably know who we're responsible for, but to have that put in a picture. So that first picture was not what you wanted.
Okay.
And so I'm meeting with him this week to get it done.
Okay.
But I'll have something to you on that.
Awesome. You give it to the entirety of the board, so we all know what we own and we're responsible for. So if we drive past it and we go, hey, that's...
Well, you had Susie here earlier. She's the one you should have sicked your dogs on. But yeah,
okay.
I'll definitely share that as soon as I have it.
Second question, I think I've asked Mr. Manning this a couple times.
He's watching at home.
He is watching the video.
Can-
Is he?
Yeah.
Mr. Manning.
From his Orca lounger.
Can we see him?
I hope not. You never know what you might get.
When we approve a landscaping plan, is there a set time frame in which that needs to be done? And after that, what is the remedy for if it's not being done?
Well, he's so gonna pay for me having to pinch it up this one, but
See if he'll text in.
yeah, see if he can give me the answer in real time. But no, what that would typically be would be if it's in a development agreement, we'd have, you're required to do X number of this. So typically those are done on when they talk about a sketch or a site plan. So if that's incorporated into the development agreement, then they're held to that piece. But if it's not on that, and it's just let's say that they didn't need any board action and they just took over an existing site, you would have to do it with a type of code type of approach. Like, you don't have enough plants, you've let these plants die, and you're responsible for replacing them. Those would be under code enforcement.
Okay, so a specific example is the switching station, or whatever it is, substation on Jackson Creek, where we approved their amended landscaping ordinance months and months ago. They haven't done squat. I mean, not a blade of grass, not a section of a nice decorative rock wall that they said they were gonna put up.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I can add some color onto that one.
and thank you for using that term.
So, the delay is more of an explanation of TriView's new manager, Mr. McGrady, was actually here last week to meet with our folks. I think he met with Tom and Larry on Friday. He was just apprised of that, our idea, which is to use money that MVEA would have purposed for their own, to share that with TriView, to be able to build a wall that closes all of that information, or all of what you see that you don't like seeing right now.
Right.
And so I think that getting Jim up to speed is what took some time there. So he had just been made aware of it recently. And so what we think we have in the works is, I mean, obviously, by the way, great first impressions from everybody that's met with him. We're very excited. He seems to be a very solid and capable manager, and somebody that I'm looking forward to working with very closely, hand in glove, hopefully. And so when we initially pitched the concept of the deal, he's like, oh, that's a no-brainer. But I think he had to educate himself on what it was going to be and what their budget numbers were and what they were going to do. But I think we're in a position where you'll see some, if they don't come to an agreement, we'll end up having to come at it from a more enforcement standpoint than we would. What we want to do is get those two together so that they can collaborate, because the problem still is that the landscape easement that MVA holds goes over the fence that's existing, dividing the two right now.
Oh, their pump station or well?
The substation, and there's a line, if you draw it between their two, there's a landscape easement. So, you know, what we're trying to do is encourage them to pool their resources and do it that way. MVEA, by the way, has been very accommodating. They've said, yeah, of course, it's a power company, so the license to print money. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but so yeah, they're in good shape. I think there's some dialogue going on. So you might not have seen anything, but it's not forgotten by staff.
Okay.
And so I will make sure that we get back to you at your next meeting to at least give you an update. When Mr. Manning can make it here.
Guarantees for the landscape.
Oh, we have guarantees for the landscaping.
Thank you, Mr. Manning.
Oh, the 21st century.
The last question I have, interior pavement developments, do we have any oversight on quality, maintaining those? Every time I drive into Safeway, I have to dodge potholes. So I know we don't own that, but do we have any ordinance to cover, you have to properly maintain it for?
I have not seen us, I mean, it's never really good news when I have to say, let me check the ordinance book, because usually the answer is not very good, but Susie could probably answer that better. Since, hey, if Larry can do this from his Barca lounge, we might as well have Susie answer that one.
Well, two things. I haven't seen anything regarding the potholes, because I've had that question asked already.
Okay.
The second thing is, Mr. McGrady and I work very closely with other clients. We know each other very well. We were just chatting on my way here this morning, actually, about some things. So he and I will get the whole tri-U thing all figured out and worked out too.
He's also the one
No, I
manager
think
I
you
can
tell
still
him what
look
to
up
do.
to, since he's about 6'7", 6'8".
We worked
nice
together
to-
for a few years now, so,
All right.
yeah, so we'll get that all rectified.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly?
I just want to thank Public Works for making the town look great again at Christmas time. I had a friend, my husband and I had a friend from the San Francisco Bay Area visit recently, and he fell in love with Monument, but he can't move here because he can't handle the altitude.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Corley, will you take us into executive session?
I recommend a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute statute 246402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice on a specific matter. It's a forest use estates litigation.
Motion to go to executive session.
Second. All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we take like 2 minutes?
5-minute recess?
Okay.
All right.